body, it's the facts we bring, yeah. Whoa, yeah. Whoa, Uncle's thing, 'tis an uncle's thing. Pull up on the body, it's the facts we bring, yeah. Whoa, yeah. Whoa.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Unkles episode 91. This evening I've got Aidan Toua in the building. Aidan is a Papua New Guinean-born professional rugby union player known for his explosive speed, strong counter-attacking ability and versatile backline skills. Born in Port Moresby, Aidan moved to Australia at a young age and went on to make a name for himself in both Super Rugby and also international rugby as well. Debuted with the Reds in 2011, later played for the Brumbies, also Agen over in France, and Japanese club Honda Heat. So Aidan, bro, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hey Richie, mate, I'm good. Thanks for having me. Mate, very kind introduction. Thank you. I still wish that explosive speed was there.
Oh no, we always love to start the Uncles episode off with a bang. So I thought I'd put that in there. But yeah, bro, just wanted to, bring you in. We've been talking for a while.
Yeah.
Missed you a few times there, but now we finally get to have you in the room. So it's nice to be able to have this chat.
Yeah, mate, it's nice to be in the studio on the Uncles podcast. We were chatting earlier. I've been following you guys since the very start, and as a Papua New Guinean, you guys putting yourselves out there. I'm proud of what I see from you guys. It's a great product. It's great content, and mate, really humbled to be on the show.
Bro, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Let's get stuck in. We always start off the Uncles episodes with the word of the week. So, bro, what sort of word stands out for you in this past week?
When you said that this was, I guess, one of the things that we would discuss, I was thinking, okay, English, pidgin, I'm just thinking of all these sorts of words. But then I reflected on the week. And probably reflected on the last couple of weeks. And I think the word that sticks out for me is identity. It's since retiring, it's something that I've been still learning about, and still, going deeper into finding out about identity, who I am. For so long, it was all rugby. And so when the rugby finished, it was sort of, I struggled going through that transition and, what am I good at? What am I meant to be doing? And so the last 3 years has been a real big discovery phase for me. And more so in the last month. And I think the last 6 months, I would say I've really not found the answer, but I have a much better idea of who I am. And I tell you what, it's been, I don't know whether liberating is the right word. Maybe it is. But it's, you just feel that happiness, I guess, that deep down. And so, so identity, I think, is the word of the week for me.
Yeah, that's an amazing word. And I look back at, even when we spoke to David Mead on his episode, and he talked about that, straight after when he retired, he sort of went through that as well and had to see some counselors, and that helped him to bounce back. And even we were talking before the episode about, my year off alcohol and not drinking. And that was a big year for me in finding my identity, I guess, my mission, my purpose, why am I here? Why are we doing this? So very important.
Yeah, it is. And, as you would have spoken about with media as well, it's a general transition phase that a lot of athletes go through. And so it's crazy to think that, the majority of us aren't prepared for it, or we don't prepare for it earlier on. So I think there's a big space there that we can definitely improve. And part of, I guess, being an ex-athlete now is I feel like I've got a little bit of a responsibility to look after the next generation coming through, and it extends outside of sport as well. Particularly returning home to Papua New Guinea. There are a lot of idle youth, people not knowing who they are or what they're meant to be doing. And so, part of my purpose is helping our youth, helping the younger generation just slowly figure it out in their own way, and giving them some guidance, some tools to be able to do it. Because, as I said, it's such a great it's a great experience to go through, with your 12 months sobriety, and you learn so much about yourself. And you just, it's about just, I guess, going in, asking the right questions, and just being brutally honest, which was tough, because I'd ask myself questions, a few years ago, and then I'd probably just come up with an answer that I thought was the right answer. Yeah. Didn't want to, some confronting truths, I think, that you learn. But yeah, it's and I'm glad Meaty was open enough to, talk about getting help and going to see people to help you figure it out, because you don't have all the answers. No. And I find that the more, I'm having this conversation, and I've learned to speak about it really openly, about the transition and the battle. I don't want to say the battle, but I guess just the journey and what the journey holds. And it's been, mate, it's been really good to this point. There's still so much more that I want to explore still. So
yeah. Well, look, we'll get into it. Later on, I'm sure. But let's start off with, I guess, where it all happened for you. Where were you born and raised?
Oh, was I born and raised? Mate, so born at PNG-born, 3 Mile in Port Moresby. Yep. January 1990, and born and raised in Port Moresby. Yeah. And so I think when I was younger, and we jumped around a bit. Yep. We lived in Gordon's. We lived in East Broco for a bit. Yep. And then I think in 98, around then, Mum and Dad bought a house in town. Yep. And then so schooling wise too, I started off at East Broco. Then I went to Ella Beach. Yeah. And then I did my last couple of years at Ella Murray when they merged. And then came down to boarding school. So yeah, mate, born and raised in Port Moresby.
Yeah. What was some of the childhood memories like? We always love to talk about this because us, the three of us at the Unkles, when we first started the Unkles podcast, we wanted to, go back home and see, what were our childhood memories, and how did those moments sort of shape us to the people we are? Because at the moment now, we moved over when we were teens, and then you sort of try and integrate into Aussie culture. Yes, yep. But then in the back of your mind, you also know that you're Papua New Guinean. Yeah. And then you go back and your accents changed, and you talk to your cousins, and so all of that happens. But what were some of the I guess great childhood memories for you?
Yeah, I mean, before I get into the childhood memories, you just touched on something and it brought back a memory. Moving from PNG to then coming to school here and our accents, right? So my cousins, they were born in Oz and they grew up here. So it's my mum's sister's family. Okay. And I remember being here as a 11-year-old. We came and we visited them. And obviously at the time, I just think I talk normally. And I remember in my auntie's house, I was just coming around the corner and my cousins are standing there talking to my mum. And they asked her and they said, "Hey, how come Aidan and Courtney's accents are different?" And I remember hearing it thinking, "Hey, shit, is my accent really different to theirs?" And I think that's when the whole identity crisis happened, maybe. Yeah. Wow. And then when I came down to Churchie, I was super conscious of the way I spoke, of how I acted, because as you said, I wanted to integrate and assimilate as seamlessly as possible into boarding school, into life in Australia. And I think at times I really lost sight of the PNG kid who grew up there. And that's all been part of this reflective process that I've taken over I've been going through the last sort of few years and identifying those things and a lot more as well. But going back to your question about childhood memories, most of my childhood memories are full of sport.
Yeah.
You know, I just loved it. I lived and breathed it. Cricket and soccer were my main sports. And so playing on the weekends for Broco East and then Ella Beach. And then a lot of my childhood memories were actually at my nana's house in Manuoto Port there.
Yeah.
Just not too far from Malaoro Supermarket.
Okay. Yeah.
And so my nana's house, and I used to just love going there because my dad's 3 younger brothers lived there. Mm-hmm. And my dad's youngest brother is only 8 years older than me. So sort of like a bigger brother.
Yeah.
And so I just remember such fond memories of spending, you know, nearly every weekend there.
Yeah.
And playing cricket in their backyard with all the street boys.
The best.
And so their house, it was like at the end of a cul-de-sac. And it was like a halfway house for so many people.
Yeah.
They would just come, they'd be there for a few weeks, and then they'd disappear, and you just see all these people come in and out. They ended up building a little like boy house at the back, and it was for anyone.
Yeah.
And so when I moved back in 2023 to Moresby, I went to Duffy's in Gordon's.
Oh, yeah.
Duffy's Cafe, and then I was going to go see Trav Chu. And then the security guard was there, and I said, Mikam looking boss man. And he said, okay, sorry, what's your name? And I was like, Aidan Toua. And he looked at me, he was like, hey, Aidan, it's me, Stiggy. And I was just like, hey, mate, I had no idea who he was. And he was like, you know, Stiggy, we're at Kaya Place together. And I was like, mate, I'm so sorry. And then took a photo, sent it to my uncles.
Yeah.
And they were like, Stiggy from Horse Camp. Like, he was one of the guys who lived in that house in the back.
My God.
Just looked so different.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Honestly, it was unbelievable. Like, I wouldn't have seen him since, 99 for that long.
Long time.
And so,
yeah.
So that house, just so many good memories of playing cricket and just being surrounded by so many people.
Yeah.
It really was, it was a communal house. And I don't know how, like, I look back at it now and like my nana, she was just such a giving person.
Yeah.
Because she would feed all these people who were there.
It's crazy.
And not once, not that I can remember, be pissed off, or she would just do it. It was just part of who she was. And she was Fijian.
Okay.
She was, she was Fijian, but she learned how to speak Motu, Pidgin.
Wow.
Fluently. And so, and all the boys used to call her mum or nana, depending on their age. So she was like the matriarch of the street. Yeah. So I'd say, they're probably my main childhood memories.
Oh man, that's beautiful. You reminded me of a few of mine there as well. Just lots of soccer, cricket in the driveway.
Yeah, that's it.
Soccer was just a big thing. Like I remember I was at East Waroko, grade 1, grade 2, and you would just always wait till Saturday till you wake up.
Hanging out for it, hey?
Oh, you put the shin pads on, the little shin pads. And then, because, in under sevens, they just got the little post there.
Yeah.
You're not playing on the big field, you're just a little grid. And still to this day, I look back and think about those times. Dad used to coach
my dad
the
too.
team, so he would always be on the sideline and, you're wearing the famous Boroko East colours, the blue, red and green.
Well, blue, red and green is... So when I was there, Boroko East was green, white.
Oh,
green
really?
And white, yeah.
Oh.
So it was similar colours to like Pompeii.
To
Pomis.
Yeah.
So it was green and white. And our soccer jerseys were like green, white and a bit of blue on them.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so red, that was more sort of Koroboro.
Yeah, I think they changed to Koroboro.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, because we were wearing the blue, red, and green.
Okay,
I remember that.
Right. And were your games at Sir John Guys?
No, we played up at that the top field.
At the high school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that little East Waroko next to the mountain.
Yeah.
We used to do all our cross countries in
that's the one. Yeah, they still do it there.
Really?
Yeah. My daughters run it into school cross country.
I actually used to think that was the scariest thing ever because the cliff was
quite steep. Yeah. They're still doing it there.
Wow. Yeah, that's a throwback. That's a big throwback. And then obviously we mentioned before you moved down here to go to school, and again, with us on the Unkles, these are like sort of big moments for us, and we always like to ask people about these moments because most of the people we talk to, you know, they're born and raised in PNG and then they come over.
Yeah.
And there's some sort of, you know, there's always a challenge. There's a few hardships. You know, the main ones are always, you know, your accent and, you know, you might be different, whether you're going to a place where there's a few PNG boys like us. We went to Nudgee, kind of, you know, it was pretty easy for us to integrate in.
Easier.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they were like, you know, we had 20 boys spread across different age groups, and they always had a group there.
Yeah.
But, you know, for you, what was it like coming over here and then obviously finding your feet through high school?
Yeah, it was, you know, from what I can remember, it was quite difficult. I hear about you know, talking about going to Nudgee and just having that instant community. It wasn't quite there at Churchy. When I first went there, there were a couple of Papua New Guinean kids who started with me in grade 8, Reetsen and Jeremy Parsonson. And so we sort of stayed close to each other. We had, you know, and I think most schools do it, the week transition before school actually starts. And our parents were with us. So mum came to school. She stayed with me for that week to help settle in. You just get to know everyone, and which helped a lot. We had a small grade. We had 8 year 8s in our boarding house.
Wow.
4 of them were country kids.
Yep.
1 guy was from Hong Kong, and then 3 of us Papua New Guineans.
Wow.
So we ended up being a pretty tight group, and I think that sort of helped. But, you know, it's so great that we're all, like, we can all talk about it now, right? And understand that, man, we all went through the same issues and the same challenges. And, you know, it's no different to transitioning out of sport. We're transitioning from PNG to Australia. We're learning a new culture. We're trying to fit into a new culture. And so talking about it, you know, hopefully, you know, there might be other parents or other kids listening, and so they can be more aware of, you know, what the kids are actually going through. Yeah. Because as you said, I think it was a normal thing. I mean, we're very privileged. We're very lucky to be born there and then have the ability to come to boarding school, or, you know, our parents have the ability to send us down. But it seemed like it was something that a lot of Papua New Guinean families were doing, you know, and obviously to give us a better education and a better opportunity. Yeah. So because it was somewhat normal, you know, I think everyone just thought, oh, it's okay, there's heaps of kids doing it, it's fine. But then, you know, you find out, like, each kid everyone went through our own individual battles. Yeah. You know, I don't think I felt comfortable. I mean, it only took a few weeks, I'd say, or maybe term 1.
Yeah.
And then, but I mean, after that, mate, I loved my whole boarding experience. Yeah. It was, and I think being good at sport was helped with that transition. And it was, you know, because I was just so, as I mentioned before, I was so conscious of my accent, my mannerisms. I just wanted to fit in. I didn't want to stand out. But then, and cricket is term 1. But then when I went to cricket training, or when cricket came on Saturday, it was like, oh man, I finally get to be myself. Yeah. I can be Aidan. Yeah. Which is why I really love sport. Because it was my, I guess it was an arena where I just forgot about all of that stuff, and I'm just going to be exactly who I am. Yeah, which was great. And, you know, fortunately I was really good at it. And so, you know, that first term at school, I think I started off in the 13 E's. Yep. Or the 13 D's. Yep. And by the end of the year, I was up in the A's. Wow. Yeah, I think I scored, you know, 4 or 5 50s in a row in the E's, and then the C's. Yeah. And then I was in the A's by the end of it, which was a really difficult experience because they were playing on turf wickets. Yeah. So I didn't have spikes. I didn't have anything. Yeah. I had no gear. Yeah. I had this family. So when I made the E's, I borrowed all the stuff, and then when I made when I got promoted, I guess, to the C's. Yep. I was opening bat with this guy, Lockie Collins. I'll never forget this guy and his family because I scored a 50.
Yeah.
I think it was against Toomua Grammar. And his dad was just... And I had no kit, so I had to borrow it all.
Yeah.
And then the very next week at the game, his dad came with this kookaburra bag.
Wow.
And it was like all secondhand stuff. But he was like, here, Aidan, this is yours. And I was like, oh my
amazing.
gosh. And I'll never forget this guy and his family, you know, for what they gave me. So it was awesome. But playing on turf wickets was, man, it was so hard.
Straight.
Just slipping everywhere. And so, you know, unlucky for Dad, he had to go and buy me some spikes and, you know, and then buy me actual gear.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny you said that because, I remember when I first got there in year 8, I did the same thing, went down cricket, but I just stayed in the 13Es the whole way.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah.
It was Toowoomba as well, and we got I got 5 for 5.
Okay,
in the 13Es,
good figures.
and they were like, okay, yeah, thanks everyone. But
you guys obviously had really good cricketers because a 5 for 5 normally means you're playing upper team the next year. I mean, upper team the next week.
Yes,
right? But your cricket program was obviously very strong.
Yeah, we had quite a few teams. Yeah. No, but it was a really good experience, and you know, obviously for you, I spoke about in the intro. You know, rugby became a big part of your life, and I understand that, you know, it wasn't something that you had played previously.
Yep.
And, you know, still to this day, most people, they'd probably be like, what the hell? Like that's crazy. When did you start playing rugby? And the second question is, you know, when did you sort of find the love for it?
Yeah. So, you know, we've been talking about, I guess, integrating into life in Australia as a 13-year-old. And as I said, my two passions were cricket and soccer. I mean, you know, I was waking up. I remember as a kid, vivid memories. I'm waking up at 4 a.m. to watch English Premier League. My team was Arsenal.
Gunners.
Thierry Henry, Robbie Perez, Dennis Bergkamp, all those guys, Patrick Vieira. So I was waking up at 4 a.m. to watch these guys religiously. And then from cricket, I could sit on the couch for 5 days and watch a whole test match. Like I was so obsessed with those two sports.
Yeah.
And then I go to boarding school and I'm like, all right, term 1's cricket, easy, in my wheelhouse. But at the same time, there's this new sport, rugby, which I had no idea what it was. I didn't know what the NRL was. I didn't know what Super Rugby was.
Yeah.
Like I just didn't know rugby at all.
Wow, that's crazy.
But everyone but it's so big.
Yeah.
You know, and at the GPS schools,
Massive.
you know, it's huge. Yeah. So, and in the boarding house, you know, we'd finish school, we'd come back down to the boarding house, put our bags, everyone would get changed, and then we'd go to the flat and play a game of touch rugby.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh man, what the hell is this game? I was always quite fast. Yeah. And so, you know, at the start, like every 13-year-old, you use your speed and you're trying to like run around the outside. But because we played it every day, right? And soccer, so I could kick well off both feet.
Yeah.
And we played it every day and I just learned how to pass. And I can get quite obsessive over skill and detail, and especially when I'm not good at it. Yeah. And I was like, nah, I'm gonna nail this. I'm just gonna pass the ball better than anyone here. Wow. So term 1, whilst playing cricket, on the days there wasn't cricket training, I'm playing touch rugby on the flat, right? And so this is where I learned the basic skills. I don't know the rules. And then it gets to term 2, and back then soccer and rugby were at the same time.
Same time, yeah, that's right.
And so, like, soccer is my passion. I loved it. But to fit in, I was like, I'm going to play rugby. Yeah. Because all of there's no one in my boarding house playing soccer. I think, we had 4 boarding houses. Yep. And I think there were about 8 to 10 year 8s. So about 40 year 8s in Churchy boarding that year. And I reckon only 2 were playing soccer.
Wow.
So I was like, man, I'm not going to be part of the minority because I'm already part of the minority with my skin color. So I was like, nah, I'm going to play rugby.
Yeah.
And so I played rugby, and I, similar to cricket, I started off in the 13Es. I didn't rise through the ranks quite as fast as I did in cricket. But yeah, so 13 was when I started playing the game.
Yep.
And it was, I just got to learn the rules.
Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me. I ended up, I think by the end of the year, I was in the 13Cs.
Okay.
And so I started off as the winger.
Yep.
As a winger because, and I would take a guess that that's where most Papua New Guineans start off. Unless you're Zainongo or Patoa Poraka, where you're just like, all right, you're a big boy, you're up front.
Yeah.
And so, spent the time out there observing, learning, but at the same time, playing touch rugby on the flats. I'm still working on my skills. So I started off 13Es as a winger, but by the time I got to the 13Cs, by the end of the season, I'd moved into 5'8".
Wow. Okay.
And purely because I could kick
Yep.
and I could pass off both hands.
Very important.
Quite well.
In 13s, if you've got that, then you're...
Yeah, so I still didn't know many rules.
Yeah.
I was learning.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a decent kick and I could pass, I could throw good cutouts both sides. So if there was space, when you're 13C space, you just throw it wide rather than going through the fastest
guy. Yeah.
Now I try to teach the kids, got to go through the hands, stay square, fix your defender. And then year 9, I obviously had that year under my belt. And then from under 14s, I started the year as the 14As 5'8".
Yep.
And then, it stayed 14As 5'8", 15As, and then I played 2 years of first.
Wow.
And so that's how sort of the journey started.
Yeah.
And I guess I go back to your second part of that question. When did I fall in love with the game?
Yeah.
And I'll be perfectly honest. I don't ever think I did.
Wow.
It was, I think as a kid, it was always sports, right? And as I said, I'd wake up to watch these games and I was so obsessed with sports. And so all I knew was that I wanted to be an athlete. When you're a kid, we didn't see many Papua New Guineans being professional sports people. So I actually I didn't know that it was a career that you could have, right? A professional sports person.
Yeah.
But it was just what I wanted to do. I knew in my bones and in my heart, I just wanted to play sports my whole life. And so you do under 13s, do under 14s, and then in the 15s was when I made my first rep team.
Yeah.
It was Med East. And I was the 5'8" for Churchy, and my good friend Matt Toomua was the 5'8" for Brisbane State High. Wow. And we're both in Med East together.
Yeah.
And I remember them, one of a talent scout, Paul Carrozza. So they were picking our Med East team, and they were like, okay, we want both of you in the same team, but Aidan, you're quite fast, so why don't you play fullback? And I was like, okay. I mean, if it means I'm going to be in the team, I'm happy to play anyway. And that's when that was the first year I played fullback for Med East under 15.
Wow.
And then from that tournament, we got picked in what was called the National Talent Squad. I still didn't really understand what the National Talent Squad was. I had Quade Cooper and David Pocock ahead of me at school.
Wow.
And so they were, so then that's where I got to sort of know them.
Yeah, crazy.
When I made this squad. And then under 16s, as I said, I played first, played Queensland under 16s, and then it was the year 12 year. And I remember, and Quade had obviously finished. So Quade was in grade 12 when I was in grade 11. He was the 5'8", and I was the fullback.
Wow.
For that 2006 season.
Yeah.
And then he had finished. He'd gone straight into the Reds. And then I remember, and I'm like, okay, this is what the Reds. I mean, we started training at Ballymore, and then I'm seeing the team.
Yeah.
And then that's when I started. Grade 11 is when I started going to Suncorp to watch the games.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, all right, this is what it is. Yeah, this looks cool. And then I remember in grade 12, Quade, he was out of school, and he goes and he got in touch with me, and he said, hey, my agent wants to have a talk with you. And I was like, agent? He was like, yeah. and he'd obviously been hearing some things, and then so I got an agent. I didn't really know what he was doing for me at that point, but everyone was doing it, so I'm like, okay, you must have an agent. And then I think, and I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I think rugby just turned out to be my vehicle to be the athlete and the sports person that I wanted to be, that I always thought I was going to be. And so it's just, you know, I often think, Rich, if I went to a different school, that it could have been something else. It would have been soccer, or it would have been cricket. You know, and Nudgee's a huge rugby school as well as Churchy, but you know, and I only had this thought the other day, because I'm starting to think about schools for my son. You know,
BBC,
and
apparently they got a really good soccer program.
But I often thought if I went to Nudgee, because it's got such a great PNG community, I would have felt more comfortable with who I was, and I maybe, and I don't know, hindsight's a great thing, and maybe I wouldn't have been so inclined to try and impress people or try fit in as much as I was trying to at Churchy, and so maybe I stay with cricket at Nudgee because I play cricket and soccer, or you never know. But that's the path that I went down. So, mate, I don't think I ever loved the game of rugby. It was just, as I said, it was just the avenue where I was able to make a career out of being a sports person, because it was the one that was presented to me, and it's the one that I took.
There's a lot that I can relate to.
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is.
With your story, because soccer was my biggest thing. And when I first got to Nudgee, it was the same soccer, rugby in term 2, and I decided in year 8, I was like, I'm just gonna stick to what I know and play soccer. I'm not gonna play rugby. And then went through year 8, and then you obviously make some friends, and then you play more touch, and then when you start playing touch too, you're sort of noticing that, you know, you're doing something good here. You're, you know, breaking the line, scoring tries, and all that. So you're like, okay, maybe I can try rugby now, because I'm feeling a bit more confident. And even the boys were in my ear too, like, I can't play. So then get there in year 9, and then I think it was just outside center. I was just like, let me just play this position. And we were I was in 14 Cs then, and then I ended up going to the Bs, and then by the end of the season, the fullback got injured, so I went into the As. And then sort of just stayed there. But I like what you said about, you know, you never really fell in love with the game. Because I think I was just doing it because that day when my friends told me to come play rugby, I was like, oh yeah, I'll come give it a go. And then everything just sort of happened after that, like first 15, Queensland, all of those teams. And it all happened pretty quickly without me even sort of understanding the work that I had to put in on the other side. I was just like, oh wow, okay, this is happening here. This door is opening here. And then when I finished school and went into sort of club rugby, and then I didn't have the routine or the backing of, you know, being at Nudgee and, you know, going to your dorm room and breakfast, lunch, dinner is there. You know, I was
think for yourself,
living on my own now. So, and going to uni too. So, you know, when that happened, then all the injuries started to happen. And then, you know, that opens up a whole new can of worms. So then I liked playing rugby, but I didn't love it. But I think the biggest or the proudest moment for me was when I played for PNG in Hong Kong. And that was like, still to this day, even when I was there in the national anthem, I was like, man, if I never ever play another rugby game again,
doesn't matter.
I don't care. I don't care.
It's, mate, and it's something that I'm very envious of you for. I wish, and I tried in 2022 to play for the Pukwoks, but there were some eligibility issues because I played sevens for Australia, and then to change your eligibility, you have to get the passport for the country, And so I got mine taken off me in 2012 because there wasn't any dual allowances. So there was, and then it stopped.
Yeah.
And so they took, I remember going to renew it and they said, no, you can't hold both. I said, what? I've been having both my whole life.
Yeah.
They're like, no. And so I was like, well, I was with the Reds. Here's my PNG one. I'm not going to renew it. But then to try play for PNG again, I had to try and it just got too complicated. And so I never did. And so I'm very envious that you got to. But my proud moment, it was probably winning that grand final with East in 2020.
That was that, and that was after you had come back, right
at the end. Yeah. That year with East, I think it was something that I needed. I just lost sight of why I was doing things, and then coming back, and it was a short year because of COVID. It was only 9. It was a sprint, 9 rounds, and then the final. And getting back to grassroots, where it started, going to train with the guys, knowing that they've come from the site all day, it just rejuvenated me. And so that was probably my proudest moment or my highlight from my rugby career was winning that grand final with East in 2020. I know you didn't ask me that question, but I thought I'd just align it.
That's good because we're gonna rewind a bit, and go back to when you first got that contract with the Reds.
Yeah,
obviously still very young. We talked about it.
Yeah,
then probably didn't know what was going on. But, talk us through that experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, Rich, it's so similar to what you just spoke about. Then not really understanding what it was all about. You lose the structure of school, and people doing everything for you. And and I was fortunate enough. So I got that agent, and he had obviously heard that the Reds wanted to sign me, and so out of school I signed a 2-year deal with the Reds. My first year was with the academy, and then the second year was with the full squad. And I was like, man, how good is this? I remember my first paycheck came in November. The year I was finishing school, and it was the week we were down at Schoolies. And one of my Samoan mates was 18. And I remember going, oh my goodness. There was a couple of grand in there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, guys, it's Schoolies. My shout. Then it's all gone. All gone. I think, and it started, such a bad habit with financials for that very first day. But it happened really quickly. I think when you're so young, you've got the exuberance of youth, right? You're the fearlessness of youth. I remember my first year in 2008. We played there was a Reds game. An Auckland team was traveling. They came for a camp on the Sunshine Coast. Yeah, the Auckland Blues. And their team had like Benny Atinga, Isaiah Toiava, Mikaeli Pessamino.
Oh, jeez.
A couple of forwards as well. Yeah. But we played a game up on the Sunshine Coast.
Yeah.
In June of that year, and I was an 18-year-old playing at fullback. I scored a couple of tries. One of them was a chip and chase one. The other one was and Chris Latham was the Reds fullback at the time.
Yeah.
And he was on his way out, right? And he was our water boy for that game. And I was snapped a picture, him giving me a water bottle, and it was in the Post-Courier. And it was, the headline was something, not Post-Courier.
Courier Mail.
It was in the Courier Mail.
Post-Courier. I was like, oh, that's pretty good. Post-Courier got onto that quick.
It was in the Courier Mail, and the headline was something like "Changing of the Baton" or something like that.
Wow. Jeez,
so it came with that expectation. But when you're young, you don't feel the expectation. You're just playing. And then the next year, 19, was when I had my first ACL reconstruction. Didn't know what an ACL was, and they were like, "Oh, you're going to be 9 months out of the game." I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And then what made things even worse was Eddie Jones was the Reds coach at the time when I signed in 2007, 2008. And then so I believe that he was the one who wanted to sign me on the recommendation of a lot of the talent scouts and whatever. But then they were going so terribly that he then got sacked or he quit or whatever, and then Phil Mooney came in, right? And then so that 2009 year, at the end of that 2008 was also the year that I played sevens for Australia, and I did at the start of 2009 as well.
Wow.
And so me and a really good mate of mine, Luke Morahan, we were coming through at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I was in the top squad and Moz was in the academy.
Yeah.
And he was just such a gifted player. I mean, absolute freak.
The Lions try is probably still one of the best tries.
And you know, he was so sick that day. So that's why he came off at halftime, mate, so sick. I mean, he was one of those guys, and people don't really give him credit, but he was one of those guys that on a rugby field, like you will just never see anyone else do the things that he does. Like, you know, wrong-footed chip kicks, made his cover tackles. The amount of times he's made a cover tackle from running the other side of the field and getting them right in the corner. Yeah. He was just a freak of an athlete and just such a great guy. One of my really, really close friends. So but he was in the academy and I was in the top squad. And then I did my knee and I was out. And then I reckon 6 weeks after I'd done my knee, Phil Mooney said, "Oh, we're not going to re-sign you. We're not going to renew your contract because we're going to upgrade Moz." And to be honest, I was like, that's fair because Moz is doing really well. Yeah. But it was gutting. I was like, oh man, what the hell am I going to do now? Yeah. Anyway, then Phil Mooney gets the sack and Ewan McKenzie comes in and we sit down and he, we talk through things and he said, all right, I'll keep you on 2010 and 2011, right? On a modest deal.
Yeah.
It was a bit more than the academy, but not quite the top squad.
Yeah.
And he just said, "You just rehab your knee. You come back." And I said, "Yep, that's great." And then I do my second ACL. I have 2 ankle syndesmosis injuries in between. I was just between 19 and 23. I think 18 and 23 in 5 years, I spent 33 months in rehab. And then coming off the back of my second ACL, I had 6 really bad hamstring tears. Yep. And it was probably through that time where I was just, I started to think, man, this is not for me. Yeah. This is it. I remember my dad saying, and my wife, Beck, reminded me this fact the other day. She goes, "Yeah, I remember your dad saying, all right, well, maybe you better start thinking about other things." Because I was just so focused on rugby. Yeah. I hadn't started uni yet. And then it was just injury after injury after injury. And
especially at that age, like it becomes your life and then it's all you think about.
And it's all you're thinking about. And I'm just like, I went through a phase, it was a bit of victim's mentality. It's like, why me? Why is this all happening to me?
You just, that's so true. Because that's what happened to me as well. And like I went through the whole injury process and then you start looking at other people and you go, oh wow, he's playing so well, why am I sitting here in the theater room? And victim's mentality, that's spot on.
So I'm like thinking, why me? 2011 the Reds go on and win it. That was the year I made my debut. And then 3 weeks after my debut I did my second ACL, and so I had to watch that from the sidelines. So I was extremely happy for everyone, but then there was a part of me that always thought, man, I wish I was part of that team. Yeah. Like I was a part of the team, but I wasn't a part of the team. And so, mate, that 2012 year was, I want to say maybe the hardest year of my life. Going through those, like after the 6th hamstring tear, as I said, I was just thinking, I'm not too sure what I do now. I was really depressed. I was drinking heaps. Numbing the pain, I guess, going out, not really worrying about what anyone else had to think. Yeah. Being a bit of a big head, right? And then I had a conversation with Ewan, and he just said, "Hey mate, look, this has just been such a shit time for you. I get it. So I'm going to give you a 2-year deal, and you just work with Marshy, the S&C coaches. You work with these guys, and you just get your body right. And then when you're ready, you'll get back on the field." And I was just like, man, what a guy. You know, I stopped believing in myself. Yeah. And here he is, you know, just won a premiership, coaching, and he must have seen something in me to give me that opportunity, give me that lifeline. And so, you know, and it flipped it all around. And I was like, but going through that period, it also made me, you know, realize how quickly it can go away. So I got back into my study. Yeah. I started back up at university, made a couple of little changes, and, you know, I never got back to, and, you know, and I played on another 8 years after that. And I never was the person that I was, the rugby player that I was previously. Yeah. And I never got to that rugby player again, but I enjoyed the journey so much more. Yeah. I was just so grateful that I got to do it for another 8 years. Yeah. I got to travel the world. You know, I've got 4 kids now, and I had a couple of them whilst we were playing. My eldest daughter was born in France. Yeah. And so going to France was a bit of a restart, a refresher. Yeah. And, you know, it came off the back. 2014, I scored this unreal try against the Brumbies.
I think I've seen that
for
one.
round 1, and, you know, and everyone was like, he's back. And even me, I'm like, man, I'm back.
I'm pretty sure, you know? It's so funny because pretty sure when you scored that try, we were all in on the weekend at boarding. Yeah. And we all have like the common room area. Yeah. So we're all sitting outside, and then we like had the big TV on. Yeah. And you scored that try, and like all of us, the PNG boys, were like, oh, like, you know, just little kids going off. But we obviously knew you and Will were, you know, the only PNG boys kind of, you know, in the rugby union space. Yeah. So it's crazy to just hear that.
That's so great to hear. Yeah. Oh, that's really nice to hear. But yeah, so I scored that try, and it's like, this is my year. You know, this is going to be it. And then 4 weeks later, we go to South Africa. And then the second game in South Africa, I ruptured my pec. And, you know, but not as dark as when I did my ACL. I was a bit disappointed because I was in contract negotiation with the Reds about renewing. Mm-hmm. And when those contract negotiations had started, me and my missus decided we'd buy a house. And so we're like setting up, right? Yeah. We're out of those years where things were just so difficult. And then I rupture my pecs. I'm disappointed. The Reds go cold for a while. And I'm like, oh, man, what's going on? And then... yeah, we had our disagreements. They still wanted to sign me, but it didn't work out. There were lots of things that happened. Yeah. And I got an opportunity to sign with a French club. And I remember at the time, me and Beck, we were engaged at the time. And we were like, look, you know, the last 5 years have not gone as you would have wanted them, as I would have wanted them. Let's look at this as a fresh start. Like, let's go there. And if we're in France for the next 10 years, we're in France for the next 10 years. You know, that'll be our life. And, you know, like, you come to terms with it. Yeah. And then so I signed the deal. And the next minute we find out Beck's pregnant. Yeah. And then, you know, it all sort of happens. And then we moved to France. You know, she's pregnant. We're enjoying living in the south of France. Matilda was born over there. And, you know, look back, and I played 22 of the 30 games. Agen, we were in Pro D2. We win it that year. Wow. And I'm just enjoying life, enjoying footy. Yeah. And it's, you know, when you just shift that, the priorities, right? Yeah. And it was like, oh, I'm now, you know, I'm a dad. Yeah. I'm living in the south of France with my young family. We're going to enjoy this experience. Yeah. And rugby, you know, I'll train during the day and I'll play on the weekend, but I was looking forward to other things. Yeah. You know, I wasn't so focused on how I was performing. I wasn't scrutinizing every single little thing. And as a result, you know, you hear about some guys, some players who make it, and they're so detailed, and they've made so many sacrifices, and I'm just not that type of person, I think. So I look back now.
I'm the same.
And I was never ever gonna make it, or make the pinnacle of the sport, right? Because I didn't have that personality, that mentality, to want to do it, right? And so when that shifted, and so I think, you know, in those earlier years, I placed too much pressure on myself and put too much emphasis on making the team, getting a contract. It was my identity.
Yeah. Okay.
You know?
Okay.
When I had Matilda and it all shifted, I didn't worry if I was going to make, because if I didn't make the team, I'm like, oh, let's go here for the weekend.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't bother me.
Yeah.
Right. I wasn't thinking about getting contracts, but as a natural result, when I played, I was playing awesome. I was playing great footy. I was just playing free footy.
That's the best footy.
Which is fantastic. So that year in France, it was, it was a little turning point. I guess it was my first sort of realization that, you know, rugby's not everything.
Yeah.
And then I get a call from Stephen Larkham.
Wow.
And he's like, do you want to come to the Brumbies? And I still had a year on my contract in France.
Yeah.
And so I had a young baby. I think Tilly was 5 months at the end of the season. And then Beck was sort of 50-50. She wanted to enjoy France as the family, but then at the same time, she wanted to be a little bit closer to her support network, which I totally understood as well. And so, so we made the decision to come back.
Yeah. And what a decision that was, because I think you played majority of your Super Rugby games with the Brumbies.
Yeah.
And, you know, went on to play really well for them.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it was probably contributed to the fact that I did have that little, you know, when Bernie rang, I remember thinking, you know, this is an opportunity to just rewrite some of the stuff about me in Australian rugby. So my ego took over a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, if I was a bit wiser, maybe I don't take that opportunity and I stay in France, because like when I think, like, it was never about the Wallabies jersey. It should never have been about it. For me. So it was my ego. And I thought that if I come back from the Brumbies to the Brumbies and I'd done well and I play for the Wallabies, it would make everything that happened at the Reds better.
Yeah.
And all the injuries and all the failure that happened at the Reds, it would make it better if I did this. But that's so stupid. Of course it's not going to make it better. But we did come anyway.
Yeah.
And mate, but you're right. It was 2 bloody fantastic years at the Brumbies. And not because I played every single game over those 2 years. It was the whole experience. I love living in Canberra.
Yeah.
Just small. My second daughter was born in Canberra. And my dad's brother was living there with his family at the time.
Nice.
So we had family there. He unfortunately passed the first year that we were there, which was quite sad. But he got to see me play for the Brumbies, and he was a Brumbies member from, you know, as long as they'd lived in Canberra. So he was super proud. So that was great. From that point of view, I'm glad that we did go to Canberra. And the Brumbies, the organisation, mate, it was just, you know, the guys who went down to the Brumbies historically were guys who couldn't make the Reds or couldn't make the Waratahs.
Yeah.
So they go to Canberra.
Yeah.
So everyone goes down there with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, or with a bit of a point to prove. But the beauty of being down there was that, and we had a fantastic play development manager, that's what they're called, Robin Duff, who was a lady. So she was in charge of the players. But everything that she organised was family orientated. So we got to know all of the other families who were down at the Brumbies with us. All the barbecue, everything we did together, we did it as a huge group. And so you're connected so much more. I mean, at the Reds, you know, we're all training together because we're all from here. We've got our different circles outside, right?
You get in your car and drive home.
So you get in your car, you drive home, you're speaking to other people, and then, whereas at the Brumbies, it was a totally different environment. And it was probably the 2 years that I spent down there is when I learnt the most about high performance. Yeah. I learnt a lot of my lessons on leadership down at the Brumbies. You're a bit older, so you see things a little bit differently. Yeah. My role in the team had changed at the Reds. It was a young guy coming through. At the Brumbies, I was a starter. And although I never felt comfortable, you know, I never took it for granted. I never felt comfortable. it was probably my mind shift changed, and I was all about making everyone else in the team better. You know, it was different, and I think that's why I enjoyed it a lot more. I wasn't so selfish. I guess, you know, it helps when you're the starter, when you're in the team, right? But I'd like to think that even if I wasn't, I would have had that same attitude at Canberra. And so I think, and not placing so much importance on having the jersey for that week or being named in the team for that week, it also allowed me to play a lot better than I did at the Reds. I still, as I said, you know, I still don't think I ever played my best. I never was the best version of my rugby self at Super Rugby. I never think I reached it due to so many different factors. But the Brumbies was definitely when I think I was the closest.
Got close.
But taking away all the stuff you do on the field, I think off the field it was when I definitely felt the best.
Wow. And you spoke there about you know, having your kids through that process as well, and I think you know, that's one of the things we like to discuss as the uncles is, you know, fatherhood. Charles, one of the uncles, is now father himself with a little daughter. So what was that experience like for you? Because obviously you're juggling footy, you know, being a partner, but also being a father for your kids.
Mate, honestly, like having a kid and becoming a dad, and you know, I'm assuming it would get said all the time, but it is probably the biggest life-changing moment that any man will ever experience, and there's nothing like it. You know, there's nothing like being responsible for these little people, and it's just an absolute different feeling. And I think one of the things that I've really worked so hard on, I think naturally being a dad, I was quite good. One of the things that I like to think that I'm a lot better at was being a better husband. Because, you know, being a dad is just one part of the equation. And, you know, I just see so much importance now in being, you know, the best husband that you can be. It helps be the best dad you can be, and then just being the best person for your family, right? Because it's not just all about the kids. It's me and my wife, and then if we're good, the kids will be taken care of. But yeah, mate, it's the single most biggest life-changing moment. And as I said, I didn't realize it at the time, but on reflection, it was definitely a catalyst in the changing of the way that I thought about everything. You know, and it just, that little shift in your identity, right? I was no longer just Aidan the rugby player. I was now a father. And I just had different responsibilities. And yeah, it's, I love it. I loved it. And I think rugby, you know, being a professional rugby player, you had every Wednesday off. In the off season, you know, you take a couple of months off, and throughout the day, little times to come back home, and, you know, you get a couple of hours in the middle of the day where I was able to come home. And so I was fortunate that I guess I was a rugby player at the time, because you do spend a lot of time with the family. I mean, you go on tours and, you know, some days you're out early and you're not back till very late, but in general, I think we were able to spend a lot of quality time as a family, which was great. And it's something that I've, you know, even though I've retired and are now in the corporate world, it's something that I just don't sacrifice, is my family time. But you know, I guess it's all about balance at the end of the day.
No, thank you for sharing that. That's really, really good insight into, you know, what you went through and fatherhood there. But back to that word identity, because you know, you spoke about the last 6 months is, you know, when you started to, you know, find that identity. And during that 6 months, you're obviously back home in PNG as well. And you've been there for Over a year now?
Yeah, 3.
3 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've been back home for some time. Like, tell us about that, returning home to, PNG.
Mate, I think it was my time while I was at the Brumbies, right?
Yeah.
And you start to get a bit older and you understand that, okay, I can't play rugby forever. And so you start thinking about life after rugby.
Yeah.
Just at a very high level, not in much depth at all. But I think one thing that just kept standing out for me was going home.
Yeah.
Particularly for my kids. And as I mentioned, I have 4. And I think it was, whether it was just going to be up there for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, I'm not too sure how long we'll be up there for.
Yeah.
But it was just, for me, it was just about them understanding the other half of their heritage.
Yeah.
Like where they are from, really grounding them in their identity and establishing that quite early for them as kids. As a family unit, we're really big on values.
Yeah.
So we've got our core values as a Toua family, and then we're tying that into their cultural identity. Because the kids, they're little mixed race kids.
Yeah.
And they could look like they're from anywhere. But when people, inevitably, when people ask the question, they know exactly where they're from and what it looks like.
That's so good.
And who they are. And so that was because I have really fond memories of my childhood and playing at my nana's house and whatever, but I didn't really have much understanding of the villages that mum and dad were from. And so I don't feel like I really obviously knew the names of them, but I didn't spend any time there. And I didn't have that really grounded cultural identity, which is why maybe I swayed a lot going through the teenage years, and I struggled. I just want to fit in this crowd. I'll fit in with this crowd because I didn't really know who I was.
Yeah.
And so, as a dad now, that's one thing that I don't want my kids to lose sight of, is culturally who they are, where they're from, be grounded in our core family values. And then, so hopefully, as they start to get older and social media is going to become a part of their life, I'm sure, but they have a better understanding of who they are, more of an understanding than I did.
Yeah.
So that was always part of the reason that I wanted to move back at some stage. Fortunately, Beck, my wife, was so open to the idea as well, and she loves it up there.
Yeah.
It has its challenges, it's not as free as it is in Australia. You can't just walk to the park or go for a run.
Yeah.
We're a very outdoorsy family, so that side of things we struggle with. But it's been, I think, as much as it's been a great, initially it was for my kids, it's been so good for myself. The place has changed heaps, but in some way, like not really at all.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Obviously, lots of infrastructure, lots of stuff happening in that space, but the suburbs are still the same.
Yeah.
There's obviously a lot more people there now,
Plenty.
particularly in Moresby.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for me, it has been reconnecting back with the community.
Yeah.
Has been so great, and then and just bringing in all of the stuff that we've talked about today, everything that I've learned, and taking it back to PNG. And one of my purposes is to create opportunities for Papua New Guineans, for young Papua New Guineans. I think about the time when I was 11 years old and made the School of Excellence soccer team, and we went and played the SOE. And we played a soccer competition in Cairns.
Yeah.
Right? And mate, in our team of 20, I would have been 10, 11, 12 in terms of natural talent. And all the kids, like they're all community school kids, which is what I loved about that team.
Yeah.
And they were just unbelievable.
Freaks.
And so, and I couldn't help think, but if these 10 kids, if they got the same opportunities as I got, imagine what they would be able to do with their lives. And so I've always held that thought in the back of my mind. And so part of going back for me, and it's not just in the rugby space, it's anywhere. You know, it's creating opportunities for young Papua New Guineans to, I guess, just to give them, you know, a better shot at it. Just to give them an opportunity, give them a little glimmer of hope that life can be so much more than what they think it is. Yeah. So that's a big driving factor for me, being up there, and it's really cool, man. I mean, you know, and it's not something that's a big, profound thing that's gonna happen overnight. You know, we're speaking about it before. It's just little 1%ers, and it's just being consistent with it, and so slowly, you know, the things are starting to happen. And it's quite nice.
Yeah, I mean it's huge, you know, the stuff you're doing and what you've talked about there, because I think, you know, we're trying to do that in our own lane here with the Unkles, and you know, it first started off as us trying to share our experiences as boys who moved over from PNG and trying to find our way through life. You know, whether we went to uni and failed that subject. And then in the early episodes we talked about that, but the goal was so that if a younger PNG guy was at uni in Brisbane and he, you know, came across the podcast, and he would know that he wasn't the only one that went through that. We went through that as well. Like, and then now where we've sort of shifted to was, man, we need to start speaking to some real world Papua New Guineans that are living overseas and going through these experiences, because who knows, there might be a little Aidan Toua that will switch on YouTube, go to the Unkles and click on this episode and be like, man, he's from my village, like maybe I can be like him one day.
Exactly. So, and I think, you know, and everyone's journey is going to be different, right, Rich? No one journey is going to be the same. And so by me, you know, putting my story out there and I guess being vulnerable with people, you know, and I think, you know, I'm doing a talk at PwC next week. They've got a staff development day and they've invited me to talk about high performance and performing at this high level. And, you know, it made me really think. And I'm just thinking, you know, in terms of me performing as an athlete, it's like I never reached the top. You know, what do you guys want to hear? What are you going to hear from me? And so I sort of flipped the script a little bit, because I never won any trophies. I didn't play 100 tests or all of those things. So I'm not going to inspire you with all my success as a rugby player. But I think there is, you know, I reflect and I think about my journey and all of those, you know, spending those 33 months out of those 5 years in rehab and everything that I learned from that experience, and just being able, you know, showing grit to get through it and persisting and being resilient, you know, the different little examples that I was exposed to in leadership, you know, particularly empathetic leadership. You know, there are a whole range of things that I've learned and this perspective that I gain that I don't get if I make it to the top, right? And so, and I think that's the message that I'm trying to deliver in PNG. It's that, you know, redefine what success actually looks like for you. Success is not an end destination. It's not when you get the manager title or when you get the Wallabies jersey or, you know, for me now, like success is just showing up each day. It's just consistently trying to be better. And it's success for me is service. You know, if providing a service to my community, to my family, and just trying to empower people and allow them to be the best that they can be. If I can do that, my kids, my staff, anyone who I come across, you know, if I can do that, that's success to me. And so I think telling that side of the story and knowing that you can learn and you can grow from any experience. And I think, you know, and everyone has a story to tell and everyone has value to give. And the more that we can put it out there, you're right, because you don't know who the audience is. You don't know what people are going through.
No.
But it just might be the right time that they need to hear your struggle and what you managed to do to go through it. Or even, you know, if it resonates with them, hopefully they reach out, you know, and they want to talk to you. So that's what success looks like for me now. And I'm actually working on a thing.
Yes. I'm very interested.
A little project and a platform, I guess. And this is going to be the first time that I've ever...
Wow, Uncle's exclusive.
Uncle's exclusive. And it's called The Unsuccessful Athlete.
Wow.
And so it's, I guess, the journey traveled by, I want to say, the majority of athletes who don't reach the top, who don't make it to the pinnacle of their sport, but, you know, and wasn't through a lack of trying, right? But tried their absolute hardest to be the best that they can be, and the lessons learned in their journey there. Because I don't feel like we hear, you know, we're used to hearing from, you know, the Dan Carters, in our rugby world, right?
Yeah.
The Richie McCaws, you know, what did it take for the All Blacks to be successful? You know, or even our good mate, Willie G.
Yeah.
Like 100 test Wallaby, been to 3 World Cups, you know, and like learning, but they're such unique and, you know, such a minute population of people who are ever going to do that, ever. Yeah. And so as inspiring as it is to hear those stories, it's like for the other 98% of athletes who tried to reach that pinnacle, but for whatever reason, they couldn't make it. There is so much value in what we can learn from their journeys and what they went through.
Yeah.
And so the unsuccessful athlete, just a little play on words, something a bit catchy, but it's lessons learnt from athletes who maybe didn't quite reach the spotlight, but gained a really fresh perspective in how they view things.
Unsuccessful athlete.
Yeah.
Wow. I like that, bro. And I can't wait to see
where
you take it from.
We'll see. Hopefully it leaves this room.
Yeah.
We're working on a couple of little things.
Awesome.
Yeah, which you'll see, I guess, hopefully. If I can execute.
Yeah, no, we will see it. And we've done a lot of talking, but just to finish off this episode, we always finish off on the Uncles with a bit of advice for the next gen, because like I said, you know, there's probably little kid out there, or, you know, a boy in churchy dorms right now at the moment, who's probably like yourself, trying to find his feet, trying to find his way. Is there sort of any advice you'd give to him, or just any advice in general?
Yeah, mate, that's a really good question. I would say for the younger generation, like, be agile with your thinking, be flexible. You know, as I mentioned before, everyone's journey is different, right? So just don't be so rigid with what you can achieve, and what you want to achieve. And I think the other thing is, don't be afraid to have a mentor. Reach out to someone. You know, I think I look back as a young teenager coming up, coming through boarding school, and even my early years at the Reds, and I never had that one person who I could rely on, whether they're in your sport or whether they're out of it. It doesn't really matter. You know, my role models were just the guys who are a few years older than me, but we're all going through the same things.
Yeah.
Right? So don't, reach out to someone. And, you know, it's just someone who can just give you a difference in perspective. But, you know, I think it's important, particularly for young men, to try and have a role model in their life. Someone who they trust, someone who they look up to. Yeah. And so, I think for our younger generation, be agile and flexible with your thinking. You know, there's no right or wrong way, there's no one way to reach a destination or to get somewhere.
Yeah.
Be open to learning new and different things, learning new skills, and try get a mentor, try get a role model. Have someone in your life who you trust and who you can rely on, and it doesn't have to be your parents. Could be you. I hope it's someone like you, because you're a great dude. But yeah, that'd be my 2 pieces of advice.
Oh, bro, thank you so much. That's that episode, like I said at the start, we've been wanting to speak to you for some time, and I'm so glad we got to sit down and have a chat to you. From myself, from the Unkles, just want to say thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thanks, Rich. Mate, time's flown.
Yeah.
It's been a really great conversation, and I'm happy that I got to learn those things about you. And it's funny how similar our journeys have been, right? And we would never have known that unless we spoke so openly and vulnerably about this.
Yeah.
And so, it was nice to hear those things. As I said, mate, it's, I'm a huge supporter of what you guys are doing. I love it. You guys are doing some, really great things. So, mate, keep it up. You, Jackman and Charles. Yeah. And look, I just look forward to the Unkles growing and growing. But thanks again for having me.
No, thank you, bro. And we always say this to all our guests, but it's not the first and last. We'll have you on again. So
I look forward to it.
Yes, thanks, bro.